What's going on, guys? B. Scott here with you, and on today's show, we got your waiver wire. Looking ahead to Week 5. Week 4, it's almost in the books. We got a Monday Night Football game tonight. Raiders vs. Chargers should be a great game. But these are the early waiver wires. Players that you're going to be looking for. Nothing too pretty, but players that might help bolster your roster going forward. So keep locked and loaded right here at the first 4 downs. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going over your waiver wire ahead of Week 5. Week 4 is almost over. Pretty exciting week. Lots of fantasy points to be had by a lot of players. Some big games. Tyreek Hill, 3 touchdowns. Thank you, sir. Saved me in 2 leagues. So anyway, before we get to today's content, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff. Comment if there's a player I missed or a player you want to hear more about. Drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to get back to you. So let's dive right into it. The first player we're going to be looking at, Trey Lance, at the quarterback position. Honestly, 20 fantasy points in just a half of football in comeback mode against Seattle Seahawks defense. You got to pick him up. 31% owned in Yahoo leagues at the moment. Obviously, has huge upside here. Potential 10 to 12 upside. I think the offense, he's got a lot of weapons around him. And you see his rushing ability now. Yes, he is a little raw. I think you got to limit your expectations with how great he can be, because I think he's still a raw quarterback. So obviously limiting the expectations. But Trey Lance, man, he should be owned, period. Should be the number 1 quarterback picked up. Albeit there's one other quarterback that I'm going to be getting to, but Trey Lance is the man. Plain and simple. It's looking like Jimmy G. Who knows how long that calf injury, supposedly, how long it's going to hold him out. So you got to be picking up and rostering Trey Lance. Next quarterback, Sam Darnold. Now, I'm going to come out and say it. He's been a top 5 quarterback in fantasy, and honestly, it hasn't slowed down. 5 rushing touchdowns, 300 yards passing. 2 touchdowns, 2 more rushing touchdowns on the ground, and looking like he's going to be carrying this football team going forward. He's playing very well on the season so far. Christian McCaffrey going down, that hurts the offense as a whole. That's what I thought with Chuba Hubbard and what he can do. Now, yes, they're going to mix and match there, but it looks like Sam Darnold's the real deal, plain and simple. 37% owned, should be rostered at this rate that he's at right now. Not saying it's going to continue, but honestly, they got a pretty good roster. Lots of weapons around him, so I could see him being a viable top 10 to 12 quarterback on a weekly basis. So Sam Darnold, you got to pick him up at this point. It's plain and simple. Now that you see it against a good Dallas Cowboys defense, they did lose the game, but he still produced 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, Sam Darnold needs to be rostered, plain and simple. And then I'm going to bring up Taylor Heineke. 290 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, 5 carries, 43 yards on the ground, 3 straight weeks, over 20 fantasy points in a good matchup against Atlanta. I get it, but coming up, he's got New Orleans Saints at home. You got Kansas City Chiefs at home, then on the road to Green Bay. These are 3 games in which Heineke's going to need to be leaned on, plain and simple. That defense for the Washington football team, I don't know what happened to it. It's completely disappeared, decimated. So I like Taylor Heineke going forward here. Yeah, he's going to make some mistakes. Yeah, they're probably not going to win these football games, but for fantasy relevancy, Heineke's the man at this moment, plain and simple. He's been playing well for the last 3 weeks, and a guy that should be rostered at least as a backup. QB2, especially Superflex, he's destroying it for you. So Taylor Heineke, you got to get him. Now for a couple wide receivers, a couple old veterans that I think should probably be rostered. AJ Green, I said it early on in the season. I wasn't really sure what his true value would be, and it's looking so. He's got a pretty consistent role in this offense. 6 targets in every game, 3 straight games with 10 plus PPR fantasy points. And yes, he's not going to wow you on a weekly basis, but he's in one of the highest, most potent offenses, spread offenses in the NFL at the moment. And he's the most reliable target. Christian Kirk, 1 catch yesterday. Rondale Moore, where's he been? He's the most reliable guy, opposite DeAndre Hopkins. So obviously AJ Green should be rostered in more leagues, 10%. Now, yes, he doesn't look outstanding. It's not pretty, but he's getting it done for fantasy. And in an offense, they're scoring a lot of points. So AJ Green is a guy I got to mention. And then another guy, Devontae Parker, 38% owned, averaging 8 targets per game through the first 4 weeks. And he's getting it done on the outside, plain and simple. Miami looks bad as a football team overall. They really do. Lost to the Colts. But Parker still managed to find the end zone in this one. And then on top of that, at Tampa Bay, at Jacksonville, then home to Atlanta. That's the next 3 games. Miami's going to have to be throwing this football, plain and simple. They can't get the running game going. Malcolm Brown's not the answer. He just isn't, even though he out-carried Myles Gaskin just last week. 2 carries for Gaskin. Not good. But they can't get anything right on this offense at the moment. But they're going to have to score in these games. Brissett under center. I like Devontae Parker as a guy that should probably be rostered just based on the numbers that he's put up so far. These things aren't wowing you. Not great pickups this week, but guys that I think you could be filling your roster spots with outside of these other guys you're holding on to for loose weight, plain and simple, that just aren't producing on a weekly basis. Robbie Anderson, he was supposed to be a smash spot this week. Didn't happen once again. It's a guy that I might be looking to drop at this point because he just isn't producing at the level that we need him to. So obviously I got some more mentions at the wide receiver position. Darnell Mooney. Now, yes, had a great day yesterday. You see the uptick with Justin Fields, but who knows if Justin Fields is going to stay under center that long. Allen Robinson cannot just keep producing these subpar performances all season long. I just don't see that happening. So I like Darnell Mooney, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be too boom or bust to take a chance on him on a weekly basis. Coming off a great game, don't get me wrong, 120 plus yards receiving, but I just can't trust him to be going out and just absolutely rostering him. Now, if he strings together a couple weeks, I understand picking him up. And then another guy, Jamison Crowder, first game back, sees a touchdown. Crowder's produced a lot like this in this offense. And now you got Zach Wilson. In the first game, they finally get a win. I'm not saying pick up Jamison Crowder. I'm just saying it's a guy to keep a watch on because if he strings a few games like this, he's definitely a pick for me. Braxton Berrios, you saw, was he being targeted heavily in this offense when he was in for Jamison Crowder. Crowder comes away with a touchdown this week. Going forward, just keep an eye on Jamison Crowder. Could be a guy that could be filling a roster spot. A good bye week filler in plus matchups. And then a couple other guys. Josh Gordon, obviously added to Kansas City Chiefs practice squad, looking like he might be active next week if he fills in and can produce at least subpar to decent wide receiver 2 numbers to help this offense for the Kansas City Chiefs. Gordon should probably be rostered, plain and simple. You were rostering Sammy Watkins when he was the wide receiver 2 there. Josh Gordon's a guy that you're going to be rostering. Now, do I think he's going to explode and be this absolute great player? Not necessarily. I think he is. He's got all the talent in the world, but we just haven't seen it in long enough. But he is playing with the best quarterback in the NFL. So obviously, Josh Gordon is the name. If you feel like rostering, I understand with the upside. And then Laviska Shenault. A lot of people gave up on him. He's been dropped in a lot of leagues. Now, I don't necessarily say to jump on this, but DJ Chark is looking to miss the entire season with a broken ankle Thursday night. Laviska looked good in that game. And I think this offense is starting to round into form a little bit, being able to put together some fantasy relevant players. James Robinson running the ball effectively. Laviska Shenault targeted downfield. That's what we wanted to see. So if he's available in your league, it's a guy I would definitely be picking up, considering Jacksonville doesn't have a great defense. They're going to be in bad game scripts or trying to score points on any given week. So Laviska Shenault, if he's out there on your waivers, definitely be picking him up because I think he's got a lot of upside going forward with the injury to DJ Chark. Now on to the running backs. A few running backs to mention. Damian Williams, obvious pickup. David Montgomery looked like a serious knee injury. Now they're saying he more than likely avoided an ACL, which is great. But even a hyperextended knee, or possibly what I'm thinking, an MCL sprain, is probably a 2 to 4 week injury minimum. So Damian Williams is a guy that if he's seeing that type of volume in that offense, you just got to be rostering him, picking him up. I mean, it's a plug and play RB2 that could last 2 to 3 weeks. Could be even longer, depending on David Montgomery's injury. So Damian Williams is probably your number 1 pickup this week for a lot of those teams out there that don't have running back depth. Damian Williams, plug and play RB2 if you can get him. And then Latavius Murray. He's not wowing you. Plain and simple. He get her done. That's what he's doing. Plugging along. 18 carries. 59 yards, got the touchdown. He's had a touchdown in 3 games this season. It's not pretty. It's not going to wow you. But it's looking like they're leaning on him heavy right now as that RB1 that's getting the first crack, period, in an offense that runs the football effectively. You see they're using Lamar Jackson. He's passing a lot more, hanging in the pocket, making great throws downfield, to be honest, playing very, very well, throwing the football. But they're still going to run the football heavily. Latavius Murray is the guy they're leaning on at this moment. So he's a guy that I'd probably be rostering. Yeah, it's not going to wow you, but if you need a guy at 10 to 12 fantasy points on a weekly basis, touchdown dependent guy, he's your man if you need to roster a running back. And then Kenneth Gainwell. I mentioned him a few times before, especially early in the season. It just looks like he's outplaying Miles Sanders, plain and simple. He's playing in negative game script, which the Eagles have felt a lot over the past couple weeks. The defense doesn't look great. The offensive line has struggled. Miles Sanders just hasn't gotten the volume that he needs to produce. And Kenneth Gainwell is pretty much the garbage time king at the moment, getting touchdowns in garbage time. So Gainwell's a guy that should be picked up. Who knows? His snaps could uptick and everything else because he's playing so well and effective for that offense, plain and simple. And then they're on the road to Carolina, Tampa Bay, at Las Vegas Raiders. So not a necessarily great schedule going forward, but a guy that could see some uptick. And usage in the pass game for Kenneth Gainwell has been huge over the last couple weeks too. So a guy that should be rostered in many, many more leagues than he actually is. And then I got a couple mentions. Samaje Perine, Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously Joe Mixon dealing with an injury from Thursday night. We'll see how severe that is. He does have 10 days of rest. But if he were to miss, Samaje Perine would be more than likely the early down back. They'd probably mix in Chris Evans as the pass catcher a little bit more often, but Mixon wasn't getting targets anyway. So Samaje Perine, a guy to keep an eye on. And then Brandon Bolden for the New England Patriots. He's the new James White. I told you this last week, and I'm telling you now. He's the guy that's going to be getting the reception work. 6 catches, 51 yards, and that's who Bill Belichick's comfortable with. He's been in this offense for a few years now. So Brandon Bolden, that's a guy if you need to pick up in a deeper league, full PPR league. He's a guy that can have a lot of production going forward. I know Damian Harris, he ran a lot of routes this last week, played on a lot of snaps, but they still like Brandon Bolden to receive the ball. So he's a guy in a deeper league. If you got to pick him up, I understand. So now we can look at some tight ends. Obviously, Dalton Schultz, it's insane. Back-to-back weeks, outstanding. 6+ targets in 3 or 4 weeks, 6 receptions 3 or 4 weeks. So he's a guy that should be rostered. He's a guy not only should be rostered, but should be starting in 10-man leagues, in my opinion, at this moment. Especially now you got Logan Thomas dealing with an injury. You got other guy, Kyle Pitts, just hasn't produced big enough weeks. I mean, Dalton Schultz, plain and simple, should be on your high-end radar for waivers this week if you need a tight end. Just plain and simple. Gronkowski dealing with punctured lung. So Dalton Schultz, absolute must pick up. One of the tops of the week. Like I said, Damian Williams probably. And then you're looking at Dalton Schultz. Zach Ertz, another guy. 7 targets last week. 8 targets this week. Targets upticking. And this offense looks like it's running through 2 tight ends. Dallas Goedert still being effective. Found the end zone. Zach Ertz still being effective as well. Devontae Smith. Jalen Reagor hasn't produced. Quez Watkins doesn't see enough volume. So I like Zach Ertz as a possible tight end to be picking up and rostering and starting on a given week, considering back-to-back weeks where he's cleared 50 yards receiving, and the tight end position has just been so abysmal. So Zach Ertz is a pickup for me. And then Max Williams, I got a question mark here. 5 catches, 66 yards, touchdown. 2 weeks, no good. 2 weeks, very, very good. What can you trust here? I'll tell you this. He's in an offense that is producing a lot of fantasy points. They spread the ball around. Max Williams having, honestly, a couple career games, 2 of 4 games having career days. Been in the league for 6 years and hasn't produced at this level. Now, going forward, yeah, I could see him being productive. But you're taking a chance on a weekly basis of getting no points or a good amount of points. So that's your dart throw if you're looking at matchups based on your opponent. That's where I would take a chance with Max Williams on a weekly basis, but not necessarily a trustworthy tight end 1 in 12-man, even 14-man leagues. So I like Max Williams, but I don't know if I could trust it on a weekly basis. And then, obviously, CJ Uzomah. You saw on Thursday night 2 touchdowns. He's done this before in the past. It's a guy that you could take a dart throw with. At this point, tight ends, all of them are dart throws. And, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. I told you start both of them because they got touchdowns. Guess what? Going forward, Hunter Henry still runs more routes, so I would take the chance over him if you got to take chances on these tight ends. And I'm sure Hunter Henry's probably on most of your waiver wires. And then a defensive stream for me this week, Minnesota at home to the Detroit Lions. It's just a good stream. They've had at least 2 sacks in every single game. Also given up just 31 points over the last 2 weeks and played good offenses. Cleveland Browns, Seattle Seahawks. So it's not like they played schlubs. And the Detroit Lions, they still just haven't really got it together yet. Almost pulled off the heartbreaking win against Baltimore, but last week, you saw it. Got beat by the Chicago Bears on the road. Tough place to play. So Minnesota Vikings defense is the defense I would be streaming this week. So anyway, that's been the waiver wire. If there's players that I didn't mention, feel free to drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer your questions. So once again, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all the good stuff. And then if you got any questions on any fantasy relevant stuff, drop in the comment section and we'll have all your sit starts, your matchups, whatever you want to hear, game picks, all that good stuff. We'll have it on a weekly basis. So stay locked and loaded right here at the First 4 Downs. It's been B. Scott, and I'm out.